Hello everyone, good afternoon, but also good morning and good evening to everyone who is joining us today. I'm Roberta Solis, the Judicial Integrity Team Leader at UNODC's Global Programme for the implementation of the Doha Declaration, which acts as the Secretariat of the Global Judicial Integrity Network, a platform of judges and for judges to provide support in strengthening judicial integrity worldwide. It is our pleasure to welcome you to our next virtual meeting of the series of webinars organized by the network on the priority topics identified by its participants and that constitute new challenges for judges and jurisdictions across regions. Before introducing our panel of experts of today, I would like to give the floor to the Global Coordinator of the Global Programme for the implementation of the Doha Declaration, Mr. Marco Teixeira, who would also like to greet the audience of our event. Marco, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roberta. Good afternoon or good morning or good evening, depending where you are. My name is Marco Teixeira. I'm the coordinator of the Global Programme, and it's for me basically a pleasure to be here. As you know, the Global Programme that I coordinate is sponsored by the State of Qatar, which we do appreciate the support to have our program up and running. It's for me my pleasure and an honor to greet you all to the second global meeting of the training of the sites of the Global Judicial Network training. The first of our meeting and our discussion was in June, 25th of June, early this year, where the training sites focal points were able to gather and discuss the package of judicial ethics, training tools, and in this meeting that we had in June also included now a more broader audience, which are basically the network participants, besides the focal points from the training sites. I am impressed today. I think we are way above 100 participants, and this gathering of judges and experts from multiple languages for the names that I see attending and geographical zones. Of course, legal different traditions are also represented in here and regions. And when you see the map, this is where we stand in October 2020. In June, the scenario is different. In June, we had only 53 training sites. Now we are with 62 training sites worldwide that have directly trained more than 2,600 members of the judiciary. With Iraq joining us, enable us to reach the 60th site. After we had Uruguay and Cuba, which we would like to welcome also, to the total of 62 training sites. I also like metrics and numbers, and let me just do a reflection. Just in the current year, 2020, which is a year marked with extreme challenges to all of us, we have 14 new training sites, which is a clear signal for us and to the network of the commitment, the relevance, to jointly find solutions to overcome the current challenges, and also to make sure judicial training reaches even a higher level of priority in the different jurisdictions, because this will enable to prepare judges for the future and the challenges for sure. I am proud of the network's sustained commitment to this flagship product, and particularly I would like to commend the training sites that have made our tools and part of our training packages as an integral component of their early training for judges. I think this is a good practice, and thank you for your commitment and support. Our training tools are, in our perspective, excellent vehicles to bring the judiciaries towards fulfilling the Sustainable Development Goal 16, to build stronger institutions, and Sustainable Development Goal 5 also, because it's also empower gender and promote gender equality, are key parts of our training tools. Through specific trainings, lectures, and exercises, gender-related elements are included in our training package. This ensures that judges enter the profession with solid knowledge of Bangalore principles of judicial conduct in their minds, and also can maximize the potential of the judiciaries to lead other sectors of the society towards the achievement of their commitments towards the Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to use a recent remark of my executive director. Mrs. Wally mentioned the following. The COVID-19 crisis has shown why integrated support to address the challenges of drugs, crime, corruption, and terrorism is critical to recover better and to help the member states to get back on track to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. I just want to echo these remarks and reiterate today that we do not merely talk about judicial training, but we are preparing and contributing with all of you to prepare judges to effectively tackle multi-dimensions of crime, justice, and environmental they are operating in that are actually enabling or not able their societies to continue to fulfill the sustainable development and social cohesion, I would say. I expect that this meeting will strengthen the community of network and practitioners and allows also a sharing among yourselves of good practices and how to identify better solutions for us to continue to be solid in the near future. Before I finish, I think I want to use a quote. It's another one of my characteristics. My team knows that I like quotes, and I will end up mentioning the following. Coming together is the beginning, and I think we have passed this stage. Keeping together is a progress, is what we are now. Working together is a success, and this is what we're trying to do with all of you, is to build success and find better solutions. I wish fruitful discussions for all of you. Of course, the Global Judicial Integrity Network remains to you, for you, judges, by judges, for judges. And before I end, a special thanks to my team, Roberta, Tatiana, Cristina, Melissa, Ari, and Eileen, for again preparing all of these events and for inspiring me in every single day of my work week. And teamwork makes the dream work, so let's continue to make our dream work. So wish you a fruitful discussions. Roberta, thank you, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Marco, as always, for your great support to our work and the activities of the Global Judicial Integrity Network. Before starting with the webinar today, and for the new participants of the network who join us here, please let me briefly tell you about our work on judicial ethics training and our training sites. A strong demand for training and judicial ethics training tools were identified in the consultations held during the preparatory phase for the launch of the Global Judicial Integrity Network. With this in mind, we developed under the network the package of judicial ethics training tools as one of its leading products, aimed at providing newly appointed and serving members of the judiciary with a solid understanding of the Bangalore Principles of Judicial Conduct and the requirements for the implementation of Article 11 of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. The package of the training tools consists of an e-learning course, a self-directed course, and a trainer's manual. The package is now available in Arabic, English, French, Russian, Spanish, and Portuguese to pursue the goal of promoting multilingualism on the website of the network. Many jurisdictions worldwide have already committed to the implementation of the training tools and have become training sites. In this regard, let me extend a special mention to the Judiciary of Jamaica, which was one of our first 9 pilot sites at the beginning of this initiative, almost over 3 years ago, along with Belize, Brazil, Micronesia, Mozambique, Pakistan, Solomon Islands, Tunisia, and Uganda. And as Marco mentioned, we now have 62 training sites worldwide. Iraq brought involvement to a record 60 sites, closely followed by the participation of Uruguay and Cuba for a current total of 62. Being a training site means being committed to rolling out national and regional training and activities based on the training tools, and also, among other expectations, the nomination of a focal point to coordinate the organization of the training activities in the judiciary and to act as the main point of contact for the communications with UNODC and other training sites. It is therefore a pleasure for us to have today so many of our focal points gathered here in this webinar. As a result of the rolled out activities of the training sites, more than 2,600 members of the judiciary have already been trained based on the network's judicial ethics tools, and more than 150 new judicial trainers have been trained. And the numbers keep growing every day thanks to the creativity of our focal points. As part of our efforts to promote judicial training, several international and regional train-the-trainers workshops have been organized on how to use the trainer's manual to facilitate judicial ethics courses. Also, a first meeting of the focal points was held virtually in June to share experiences on the use of the training package, and we plan to continue to have opportunities like the meeting in June and this webinar to continue to promote the sharing of experiences, peer learning, and peer support through the network. In light of the various challenges posed by the current pandemic, we are happy to now be hosting this event. Judicial training is a fundamental pillar to consolidate and strengthen judicial integrity, and to this extent, points is one. So please count on the network and UNODC to continue to support your efforts in judicial training and in facilitating opportunities for peer-to-peer learning and information sharing as very important elements to continue advancing in the implementation of judicial training worldwide. We would also like to take the opportunity of this meeting to do a very special launch. We're launching today the new web page dedicated to the experiences of the training sites with the implementation of the judicial ethics training tools. The web page is part of the restricted area of the network's website, and it serves as a compendium of practical information provided by the focal points on their past experiences with the training tools, as well as their future plans. We would like to thank all of the focal points who have contributed to this exercise and thus made this webpage possible. We would be delighted if through your activities and coordination with the network, you continue to contribute to the website so that it's enriched with resources and opportunities for collaboration between the training sites. Now, without further ado, let's commence today's webinar in which we'll explore the topic of how to train judges during a pandemic. The pandemic has brought various challenges to judicial ethics, particularly with the design and delivery of judicial ethics training. It is necessary to find new creative ways to deliver training using distance learning methods and virtual platforms we'll discuss today. For this event, we have invited one of our training sites, Jamaica, and one other expert on judicial education that have already conducted judicial ethics trainings during this pandemic, so they can share their practices and recommendations on how best to proceed with these trainings during these uncertain times, and also provide advice to other training sites based on who, with their extensive experience and knowledge, will guide us through this topic. Honorable Justice Vignette Graham Allen of the Supreme Court of Jamaica, Honorable Justice Marva McDonald Bishop, a Court of Appeal of Jamaica, and Mr. William J. Brunson, Director of the National Judicial College of the United States. Dear panelists, thank you very much for being with us today. This time our webinar will be a little different from previous virtual events. First, the panelists will present to the participants. Second, our registered focal points will be invited to take the floor to share their jurisdiction's experience with judicial training during the pandemic. Dear focal points, please wait until you are called to turn on your microphone and video. And finally, for all the other participants attending today, you can use the chat function of the platform to ask any questions to the panelists or to the Secretariat. So thank you all very much in advance for following the rules of participation in this webinar. If you're not a speaker, please keep your microphone silent and your cameras off during the webinar so we can guarantee the quality of the audio, and please enjoy the webinar. So now I would like to give the floor to our first panelists, who are the focal points of the Judiciary of Jamaica. So Justice Vignette, Justice Marva, please, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roberta. Well, good morning to all judges, judicial officers, Judicial Education Institute directors, and our host, the UNODC, and all specially invited guests. Jamaica wishes to thank the UNODC for this opportunity to share our experiences with the focal points and with all of you this morning. My role this morning, I will speak to the planning and organization of the training, the judicial conduct and ethics training that we had recently in Jamaica virtually. And Justice Bishop, Marva McDonald Bishop, will speak to the delivery and content of the training. I start by setting for you the historical context of judicial conduct and ethics training in Jamaica. Prior to March 2018, judicial conduct and ethics training was mainly conducted for newly appointed judges at all levels in their respective courts using various materials and sources. After March 2018, the Honorable Mr. Justice Brian Sykes, OJCD, Chief Justice of Jamaica, declared that judicial conduct and ethics training is mandatory for newly appointed judges and serving judges at all levels of our courts. Further, that training should be conducted with judges at all levels together. Between August 2018 and July 2019, 2 face-to-face training were conducted and 1 face-to-face regional training for the parish court judges in the county of Cornwall in Jamaica. The strategy and methodology that we used for the virtual training in September of this year was approved by the Honorable Chief Justice and discussed with the IT department of the Court Administration Division and with UNODC. The strategy was this. Prior to the training on the 7th of September 2020, all 29 judges from the 3 levels of our courts, the Parish Court, the Supreme Court, and the Court of Appeal, had to register and complete the e-learning course on judicial conduct and ethics and submit to the Jamaica, the JEIJ, which is Judicial Education Institute of Jamaica, their certificates of completion for transmission to the Honorable Chief Justice as a proof that they had completed the training prior to the commencement of the training. The IT department was solely responsible to determine the platform to be used, and the platform chosen was Zoom. For the methodology, I will ask you to look at the focus on the agenda that has been displayed. We used video recording of plays that were done by our own local judges, parish court judges locally, and judges of the Commonwealth Judicial Education Institute, and also our own local case study that was developed by UNODC for us using our local scenario here in Jamaica. Now, what are some of the benefits of the virtual training as we see it? 1, prior to the virtual training, the training lasted about 1.5 to 2 days. With this method and strategy that we used on the 7th of September 2020, the training lasted for 1 day. The other benefit was associated cost of accommodation and travel were eliminated. And 3, the third benefit that we saw is that it was so convenient to all judges. They stayed wherever they wished and participated in the training. I would like to let you know that the judicial conduct and ethics training that we had in September was the 7th virtual training that the JEIJ conducted in Jamaica for judges. But this was the first judicial conduct and ethics training. And there are other trainings that are in the pipeline for the rest of the year. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I endorse the greeting given by my sister judge, Justice Bennett. Justice Bennett was the organizer, and I assisted her in this virtual training of the members of the judiciary. But we must first commend our Chief Justice, who has taken on this role as the authority on the course delivery here in Jamaica. He has come to the program with his strong authority, and because of that, the members of the judiciary have to fall in line no matter what they may think. So we recognize that even though we're in a crisis with the pandemic, judicial training must continue because the persons we serve expect from us the highest integrity and the best conduct ever of judges. So we find that training has to continue, and in that regard, we solicited the assistance of the UNODC to ensure that we were on the right track, and e-learning was a component that we used to ensure an exposure of the new members of the judiciary, the newly appointed members, because we have members who were appointed at different levels, some of them who were already trained. But our focus on the last seminar on the 7th of September was on social media, because the social media guidelines are very new. And because of the pandemic, we tend to be concentrating on communication more by the use of social media. So we believe that judges could be guided, and that was our main focus, having had several training sessions prior to September. So the biggest challenge for us really was, how do we follow the manual that was given to us in Brussels? The manual was developed for face-to-face training. The creators did not envisage that there would come a time when we couldn't meet face-to-face. So what we have to do here in our Jamaican experience was to suitably modify the manual to deliver the content of the course. Of course, the manual was still useful and relevant, so all we had to do was to bring on most of the recommendations on the virtual platform. So what we did was to have the IT department assist us with the breakout groups. That was the most challenging part of it. How do we facilitate the breakout group discussion in the group setting? And we must say that that went very well. We can't say how the IT department did it, but at the end of the day, we know we were able to get into smaller rooms with smaller groups of about 6 persons each. What we did was to ensure a proper mix in terms of the level of the judiciary that the participants are coming from. We look at the maturity and experience and place them in groups accordingly. So we had a proper mix of gender, experience, age, and all that. So it came out very well. We've had evaluations done, and I must say that I'm a bit disappointed that some of the participants gave a little less credit or grade for the group work. So I don't know what the dynamics would have been in the group setting, because we were not a part of the group setting. We allowed facilitators inside the groups, while Vinette and myself stayed away from that until we returned to plenary. So after the breakout sessions were done virtually, all the members again joined us in plenary on the platform, and then we had our discussions. And we had a pre-recorded video that we used from our own judges who did a role play, and we recorded it. And we had one that we were involved in, members of our court were involved in Canada at the Commonwealth Judicial Education Institute. So what we had was for the participants to look at these videos and to identify the ethical dilemmas that arose on the videos, and to use the Bangalore principles and the judicial code of guidelines, the judicial code of conduct, to answer the issue or to resolve the various issues. And we must say that we applaud them, because for the most part, their responses were in keeping with the indicative responses that were given to us by the UNODC, who we thank most wholeheartedly for assisting us in developing that particular question dealing with social media. So our focus was on really how to in terms of impartiality, we have to look at the whole question of recusal, because that is a relevant area for all judges who are newly appointed. When do you recuse yourself? and we did the social media, as I've said. And that was, we must say from the evaluation that most of the participants who have returned the questionnaire have said they were very satisfied. A few were satisfied in terms of the overall program. The only place that we're seeing there's a low mark from someone is group work, and then someone was unsatisfied with experience sharing. So we use these evaluation responses to guide us later on. In terms of the UNODC e-learning module that was completed by all the participants, there have been responses, and because the time is limited, we'll say that they are favorable, very favorable responses. And I will just say, in terms of one person, that it taught them to be careful with social media, the importance of impartiality, and that judges can participate in charitable organizations. Other persons established that it widened their knowledge, the importance of the decisions that which maybe appear to be personal, and the impact that the actions of our families or associates may have on our professional lives. And I could go on and on, because we really benefit tremendously from the feedback that would help us to design future courses. The agenda that is on the screen will show what we focused on, and I will say lastly that you would recognize that this was part of a broader orientation exercise. So judicial ethics was really identified as a component of the orientation program. And it was so identified following a needs survey that the JEIJ conducted among judges at all levels of the court. And judicial ethics training came up as one of those priority areas. So we were guided not only by the UNODC's focus on training the judiciary worldwide on judicial ethics, but on the sensitization that has come with that through the UNODC of our judges who themselves want to be guided. So we didn't need, and we were happy as trainers to see that judges identify this as a critical component. So it will not be a perfect substitute for face-to-face. The chemistry that you would want to have to be able, judges are trained to read demeanor and to go with demeanor. You don't have that. Even today, we're staring at a blank screen, and you don't get that intimacy between trainer and participants. And I did not enjoy that aspect of it, because it was a bit too sterile. And another thing I would add before closing is that once you are a trainer now in virtual space, you yourself will have to get familiar with the platform that you use. That was a drawback for me and for Vinette, because we were not fully au fait with the Zoom platform. Neither are we familiar with the Microsoft Teams, but we are now learning, and we realize the value of training in information technology for us as trainers. And I think that is part of the program that we'll have to focus on going forward, that the presenters themselves are au fait with training in the virtual space. So I leave it open to the participants and any questions they may have, but we are out of time. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Justice Marva, for this wonderful presentation. I'm very happy to hear of the use of the tools and how you managed to translate them into a virtual setting, and to see that the principles of the tools were useful in that scenario as well. You were able to tailor the training to the specific needs of Jamaica, which is something that we put a lot of thought in the trainer's manual to assist judiciaries to really take ownership of the training and make it really their own training. You did an assessment of the training, so you can see that the creativity with a little bit of innovation in the mix, you can do anything. So congratulations, and thank you so much for joining us and sharing that experience. And you also mentioned a very important topic, Justice Marva, that the trainers themselves have to also be trained on how to use these new platforms. And that is a very good link to our next presenter. So I'll use that hook to introduce our next panelist. So please let me now turn to Mr. William Brunson of the National Judicial College of the United States, who has extensive experience in judicial training and in using virtual online tools for trainings. So William, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And do you see my slides okay?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for having me on today. I appreciate it so much, and it's great to see all of you from around the world. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the use of interactive tools in Webex and Zoom in teaching judicial ethics. I know many of you out there are experts in this, and so bear with me if you are one of those experts. And certainly share in the chat tool any things that you've learned about using these types of platforms to teach your audiences. So what you're going to learn today is after this presentation, you will be able to summarize some of the interactive tools available in Webex and Zoom. And again, I know many of you are experts in this, and I'd love to hear from you. So one of the things that we like about Webex, for instance, is we like the pointer tool. And we think the pointer tool is very effective because it allows you to do a lot of things with regard to quizzing your students and also having a little bit of fun with your students. It allows the presenter to see who has put their pointer onto the screen. It's not anonymous, so the name would appear from that student. And you see here on the screen, student 1, great name for a student. And generally, it's used for questions that don't have a right or wrong answer. And so I have some examples of how we've used that pointer tool. And by the way, this is only available in Webex as far as I know. I know it's not available in Zoom. Zoom has a pointer tool feature, but only one pointer tool at a time. For instance, we've used a slide like this when we were talking to the European judges and asked them where they were from. And so they could take their pointer and put it onto their own country, and then we could see who was participating with us on that particular day. We can use it also for using for a hypothetical. So I took this hypothetical from the materials from the UNODC. May a judge join the governing body of a university? And here's your case study. And then you can ask, should you accept the invitation to join the governing body? And then all the students in the class can use their pointer, and they can click on the slide and say yes, no, maybe, or I don't know. The great thing about that is you can see who responded in which way, and then you can call on that individual. And so then you have a nice interactive discussion. Also, you can just ask it in a simple yes, no function. That way it's a little less, they're just giving 2 options instead of 4. Then we also have a 3 option slide. And by the way, we give all of these slides to our faculty so they can integrate these slides into their PowerPoint shows, and they can utilize these types of interactive methods during the course of their instruction. All right, and then of course, if you wanted a Likert type scale for the pointer tool in Webex, you could ask any question that has maybe gradients, where some people might strongly agree, some people might strongly disagree, and they may all be along that spectrum. So you could ask a question where you could see from the very most agreeable and those who most disagree. Also, we use a lot of polling questions in both Webex and Zoom, and I would actually say that Zoom, in my view, does a better job of polling because of the way that they look. The polls look very nice in Zoom. Webex also has polls. So we can have multiple choice, single answer, multiple choice, multiple answers, yes, no questions, true, false. And of course, in this case, the producer or the host creates those polling questions in Zoom or Webex and instructs the learners how to respond. At the National Judicial College, we always have a producer host for all of our sessions. And so that producer host will watch the chat tool, will put up the polls, will take down the polls and so forth, so that the presenter can concentrate on his or her content. The faculty creates the questions and facilitates the discussion. And of course, the only reason you would use a polling question is really to facilitate a discussion about the results you receive from your learners. Here's another example of a quiz question that we can use, a true-false question. Again, this material is taken from the UNODC materials, and you could ask these true-false questions and get a very quick response to how many people think this is true or this is false. Of course, this is just an example of a polling question slide. We can, again, we give this to our faculty. They can plug in the information for their particular subject matters and then provide the answers that they have. We also utilize a lot of yes/no questions in Webex and Zoom. So in addition to the polling, which is anonymous, and we won't know who responded in which way, we have yes/no questions, which are not anonymous. So the yes/no tool generally is not used for questions that have right or wrong answers. And the reason that is we don't want to embarrass our learners. And also what we've noted is there's a cascade effect. So if you ask a question of your audience and everyone responds, they will look at how the other people are responding, because the yes/no is going to appear next to the name of the individual who provided that yes or no. And so what you'll see is a cascade effect, especially if there's a right or wrong answer. And you'll see that all the answers will soon be either true or false or yes or no, because they'll watch their fellow students and they'll see how they respond, and then they will respond accordingly. So generally, we'll use this for things like, have you participated in a Webex or Zoom meeting before? Yes or no. That I don't think anybody would be embarrassed to say they have not. So I think we get a pretty accurate response for those types of questions. Or do you have this particular law in your state? Yes or no. Again, I don't think they'd be particularly embarrassed to share that information. But again, if it's a right or wrong answer, we're generally going to do that in the polling tool. So here's what it looks like. This is in Webex. This is yes/no feedback tool. And there's a participant panel on the right-hand side. And they can answer either yes or no. Then this is what it looks like in Zoom, the yes/no feature in Zoom. And if you want to use the virtual hand, now I noticed today, and I've noticed, I don't know how many weeks back, but Microsoft Teams has added a hand-raising tool. So that's something for those of you using Microsoft Teams. Now you have chat and now you have a hand-raising tool. So you have two ways to get feedback from your audience in Microsoft Teams. And if I know Microsoft, they will have many more features as time goes on. But the virtual hand tool in Zoom and Webex, it allows them to raise their virtual hand during a webinar at any time. The host producer generally will alert the faculty about the raised hand. And again, that will be a discussion between the producer, host, and the faculty member to determine if they want to be interrupted. The producer then unmutes the participant so the individual can speak. Generally, we're going to mute everybody upon entry to our meetings, especially if they're quite large like this one is. And the faculty members make the decision whether to allow the question always. So this is what we also have used the yes/no tools and the raised hand as another answer. So we basically use it as yes, no, I don't know, or whatever your third answer is. So you could do an A, B, C with the same type of approach. The yes, no, you can get an immediate count of that. And if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see what looks like a little megaphone. And if the producer, host, or the faculty member clicks on that, they will get an immediate number count of how many said yes, how many said no, and then you would have to hand count the I don't knows, the hand tool. So, but it gives you a good indication of what people are thinking very quickly. This is what the Zoom yes, no, I don't know looks like. And again, we would give these slides to our faculty so they can utilize those. We primarily utilize Webex at the National Judicial College, although we have used Zoom. We think that Zoom does a much better job of breakout rooms. Now, that's not, Webex meeting also does breakout rooms very well, and so you can use Webex meeting or Zoom if you're going to use breakout groups. If you're not going to use breakout groups, then we prefer Webex Training Center. So we also use a lot of chat questions and ask our audience members about what they think. So we will, obviously participants can send chat messages anytime, and you've seen that today during this webinar. The producer watches for those chat messages and also will have a discussion with faculty whether they want those shared or not before the session. The producer reads the chat messages to the faculty and participants generally. So our producer hosts are very active during the webinars, and they will actually participate. They will read out those chat messages because a change of voice can be quite valuable during these webinar sessions. The faculty member, of course, will decide before the webinar begins whether to accept those chat messages as they come in, or rather to take them at certain points during the webinar. The faculty member may choose chat questions to the audience, and that's what we recommend that they do on a fairly regular basis. And the producer can then type up those responses on what we call a collection slide. And so here's what Webex chat looks like. This is the chat window. This is the chat window open. And if it's closed, that arrow would be to the right towards the word chat, and they can send their chat messages that way. And this is what Zoom chat looks like. It looks very similar. And so anybody who's in the meeting can share what they think about the content. They can ask a question of the faculty member and so forth, or they can respond to the question that is provided by the faculty member. And of course, so this is an example of our faculty would say, in your chat tool, please share your answer to the following question. And then we would have a slide to collect those responses. We would title it, obviously give it a title that makes sense for the content that we are presenting. And the producer host can then type the responses onto the screen. And that functionality is available in both Webex and Zoom, where the producer host can type the responses right onto the screen, so all the students can easily see those. Of course, if you allow the participants to share their messages with the entire class, they'll also see it in the chat tool as well. We have found that some of our students are not that tech savvy, and so they have a little bit of difficulty with some of the tools. So it's nice to provide those responses on the PowerPoint slides themselves. So that concludes my presentation. I hope you found it valuable, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you so much for your attention and your time today.
Thank you so much, William, for this very practical presentation that I think will be very useful to our focal points and to the participants of the network. We already have some comments and questions in the chat, but we'll soon get to them. First, we have a list of some of our focal points who have pre-registered to also make some interventions and present also their experiences with judicial training during this period of the pandemic. So first, I would like to give the floor to Judge Vivian Lopez Nunez, Judge of the First Instance Civil Court and the focal point for the Judiciary of Paraguay. Judge Vivian, you can turn on your camera and microphone for your intervention if you're on the call. Okay, it seems that Judge Vivian is having some technical difficulties. So I'll move to the next presenter on our list, which is Dr. Arben Murtejit, Director of the Center for Judicial and Prosecutorial Training of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Dr. Arben, if you're on the call, you can turn on your camera and microphone for your intervention. I think our participants have been well trained in the organization of our webinars to not turn on their cameras and microphones during the discussions. So it seems that we are having a bit of a difficulty with their participation. Let me then ask if we can give the floor. We can give the floor to our third pre-registered focal point, Ms. Fani Haji Fani, the legal officer of the School for Judicial Training of Cyprus.
Good evening, everyone from Cyprus. With your permission, I think I'll skip my camera because I was on an earlier call, and whenever I had my camera on, I had difficulties with the internet. So if it's okay, I can just speak without my camera.
No problem at all. Please go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to apologize on behalf of Mr. Rodokridou, the school's director, who unfortunately was not able to join today. So in his absence, I will be sharing some of our experience from Cyprus. Before informing about our recent seminar we just held in Cyprus, I do want to take this opportunity, both on behalf of Mr. Rodokridou and our trainers, to thank the network and UNODC for all the help and the support that we have received. And this with regards both to the training of trainers that they offer, as well as the manuals, which have proven to be very valuable and useful in organizing our seminars. Our trainers are full-time judges with busy schedules. Therefore, these tools that are made available by the network really have made the training duties of our trainers a lot easier and have provided invaluable assistance. Just a quick background note, we rolled out our first judicial conduct and ethics seminar in 2008 for the entire Cypriot judiciary, which at the time amounted to about 100 judges. And this was part of a two-day seminar on judgecraft skills. Earlier this month, on the 6th of October, we rolled out our second judicial conduct and ethics seminar for our newly appointed judges with a total of 17 participants. And we were able to actually run this seminar as a face-to-face seminar and in the context of the initial training that we offer to judges in the first 3 years of their appointment. The form it took was that previous to the face-to-face seminar, the participants were asked to complete the e-learning course and submit their certificates. And they were also provided with links to various articles and material related to the topics of the seminar as prior reading and for better preparation. And during the face-to-face seminars, the 3 topics that were covered were the new code of conduct that was issued by the Supreme Court in 2019 and amended later on 3 occasions. The other topic was the use of social media, where we made use of the non-binding guidelines. And the third topic was unconscious bias in relation to gender. And again, inspiration was sought from the gender paper, as well as previous webinars that the network conducted. We also incorporated group exercises in the form of case studies and using flip charts for discussions and responses to various issues. And we actually received very good feedback on the format of the training. So for reasons that are obvious, we consider the topic of ethics as very important for newly appointed judges. And this training that we held on the 6th of October was actually in the planning pipeline for some time. However, we did encounter some hurdles and challenges that were mainly linked to COVID-19. First and foremost, due to COVID-19, there was a delay in the interview process and the appointment of judges who actually formed our target audience. Therefore, we took a setback in organizing the training. However, after lockdown and returning to our normal working conditions, we set up our meetings again with our judicial trainers. We decided on the content, on the structure, and we decided to proceed with a face-to-face seminar on the selected date. As the time approached, however, inevitably deciding whether to continue with face-to-face or going online was one of the challenges, which obviously carries with it the element of the unknown, as things seem to change drastically overnight, as was the case in Cyprus, and the responsibility of taking this decision. However, given the importance that we place on the interactive element, and of course, having double checked with our ministry that we were able to fulfill the criteria of safely conducting a face-to-face seminar, we went ahead and ran the seminar face-to-face. We received excellent comments. The materials that we provided the participants, the blended methodology that was used prior and during the seminar, the interactive element played a great role. The trainers received great comments. A minor setback that we had was, even though we had planned it as a 2-day seminar, we kept it to 1 day to reduce the risks. And overall, we did a very good job. And on the side, we also carried out an online presentation on the new code of conduct that was presented to the entire judiciary, but this was simply a presentation and it did not involve any group exercises. And I was happy to hear from our earlier panelist on the various tools available to actually hold seminars online where you can group participants in smaller groups and facilitate the group discussions, which kind of reflects what we did during our face-to-face seminar. So it would be interesting to hear what other pilot sites have done.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fanny, for sharing this experience of a face-to-face, especially of a face-to-face training during the pandemic. So as we all can see, it is possible, but there is a big adjustment as well to be made. So it's good to know that our training sites also have that type of experience. Thank you so much. I think now we have, again, Judge Vivian Lopez of Paraguay.
Yes, hi Roberta. I'm sorry because my internet, I think now is not doing very well here. I don't know. I think I cannot turn the camera on.
That's no problem at all. Yeah,
okay,
you can continue just with the audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's for the time is here. It's the morning, so I at the office and a lot of work here, and everybody's using the internet. So I'm sorry for that before. Well, just to make 2 comments, because the pandemic here in Paraguay was very hard to do meetings, and now in November we're going back to a new normality. Everybody is coming to the courts again. But in the meantime, we did 2 webinars, very interesting, using Teams. We used this platform and it was very useful. First one was with Marco Teixeira participating, and he from Vienna. It was 12 in the evening, and here was 6 in the afternoon. and we have around 135 judges from all Paraguay, new judges, new appointed judges, and we talk about integrity and all the platform about the network, and they start to how can I say this, a first approach to the tools they can use. And in this webinar, we asked the participants to write about this, and they start to send in their essays about integrity, about Bangalore principles. And now, 25th of October is the deadline. We have already a few essays about. It's very interesting how they got interested to get into the page, to do the courses, and to participate and to know more about Bangalore principles. And the second webinar we did was in October, and it was about the judges and then social media use. We used the translation that Dominican Republic did, the judicial school, and it was very interesting because a lot of questions, a lot of experience they have, and we also use the manual of our colleagues from Brazil, and also the directions that Czech Republic and Brazil and let me see, and Chile, judges from Chile. So we talk about this, but they also get very interested about how the net is approaching these new matters, new subjects that are very useful for us now. Because in Paraguay, we don't have any rule about social media use for judges. But we already had, and that's why, because I did the webinar, we have a lot of sentences of our judicial ethics court that many judges did wrong. So before they have any rule, they already been how do you say this, punished. So it's very interesting to know how to social media works and to use proper them. So this is a first step, and I think in soon we can do, I don't know when, but I hope so soon, we can start the training face-to-face. And that's what I want to comment. And warm regards from Asunción to all that is watching now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Judge Vivian Lopez of Paraguay, for also sharing with us the experience, your experience as the focal point and in conducting trainings during this time. We're also very happy to hear from Cyprus and from Paraguay that the guidelines on the use of social media and the paper on gender-related judicial integrity issues that were developed by the network were also good resources for the training. We're happy to hear that, and we encourage also the other training sites to also make use of these tools in their trainings. On our website, maybe as an added information, participants of the network can also find the guidelines on the use of social media in other languages. As you mentioned, we have the translation to Spanish done by the Judiciary of the Dominican Republic. We also have a translation into Portuguese done by the Judiciary of Brazil, Russian by Russia, Chinese by China, Korean by South Korea, and into Arabic, kindly developed by the Judiciary of Lebanon. We also encourage other judiciaries to translate these tools into their languages to facilitate access for their judges. I would like to also acknowledge and thank our focal point for the Judiciary of Turkey, another one of our training sites, Dr. Mustafa Saldrin, Thank you for your comments and your intervention in the chat. We're also very happy to hear about the experience of Turkey in using our training tools. Unfortunately, we had a pre-registration for focal points to intervene in the meeting. And now we are going to move to the questions to the panelists back, so we can also have some time for that. So in the next meeting of the focal points, we'll make sure to have more time for the interventions from the focal points as well. So thank you so much, all of you. And I will now ask our panelists some questions from our audience. We have some very interesting points in the chat. William, maybe I could start with you. We have an interesting question here about the use of these different platforms. In some cases, there are security reasons and some limitations to the use of them. So how to address those concerns? So how to maybe find other ways or even try to help participants, for example, that are joining an event but have a limited of platform that you're using and can't use all of the functionalities, for example. So maybe your 2 cents on this.
Sure, absolutely. Security is a major concern, obviously. I think Webex is probably more secure than Zoom, as an example. And of course, Teams is probably the most secure, but then also a little more locked down on the feedback tools available to your audience members. So you have to kind of look at your own situation in your own country and figure out what is going to work best for you. Certainly, one of the things about security is to ensure that you are utilizing security, so you can set passwords that are difficult to get into and so forth for your training sessions. And so a lot of times it can be the users who create the meeting that cause the security issues, and not necessarily the platform itself. And so that's something to be aware of, is to have a knowledgeable host producer who knows how to create a secure meeting. As far as the different approaches, I think all of the tools work well. So let's say you have limited ability from whatever device you're working on, you can always almost all of them have the chat functionality to allow the person to send in a chat, even if they can't respond to maybe a yes/no question or to the poll. They can usually respond in chat. So we always give them that option if they cannot respond in the way that we're asking them to respond.
Thank you. Those are very good tips, and I think this also goes back to the points made by Justice Marva and Vignette about all the preparations that the trainers themselves should do before organizing a training. Marva, Vignette, I don't know if you would also like to comment on this.
Yes, I was going to start just where you have started, Roberto, in terms of the link between technology and the training at this time. And this is where we had to rely heavily on the CAD, that's our Court Administration Division, for their support. Because as I've indicated, as trainers, we are judges first, and we rely on our judges to train others. And most of us are not really technologically savvy. And then you have to have this change in culture, because you find that many of the participants themselves do not wish to even turn on their cameras, because you'd be surprised to find people may not like how they look on cameras. So you have those basic challenges. But as I said before, it's about forging that strong connection between the experts in technology and judicial training. We had to rely heavily on our CAD as for the platform choice. We had no choice in that. But I figure with security, like with everything else, that will be a challenge. Just like our emails, because a lot of the tools that we work with, we have to pre-prepare them and send them out to the participants through emails. So as our fellow panelist says, it's about perhaps creating the strongest passwords you can find and trying to take precautions not to put sensitive material out there for the public. But that will always be a challenge, I believe, with the use of technology. But we are hoping that with time, we'll be able to learn more about the different platforms and to make our more informed choice as to what do we use for the delivery of the program. And the last point I would make here is that what we did was to have things that we were not able to complete, even if it was not for the ethics component. We have like judges of a lower court would answer a question, and what we did was to ask a higher court judge to review that question. But what we have done is to give them time for review. So after their review, we intend to meet again virtually for the feedback. So I say this to say maybe you'll not be able to complete everything within one session, but we are virtual, so we can meet in space more conveniently at any time, and then you get your feedback and you can resolve issues that way. So in terms of the choice of platform, we're hoping that after today we can explore other options, and we're happy that the Webex platform is the first I'm hearing about it, but I'm not one of those who are really savvy with technology. So that is all we will have to say about it. There will always be challenges, whatever platform you use.
Yes, that is very true. There is always a challenge, which is also the case with the face-to-face participations as well. There's always a challenge as well in the face-to-face participation that doesn't go without any issues either. But I guess we are more used to dealing with those issues, because then we can rely on human interactions to solve those. Maybe also linked to this, we have a participant that made a very interesting comment in the chat, but I'll turn that into a question. The participant mentioned that biggest challenge that the person has found in online training is to find the participants' involvement in the training and how to check their level of understanding. So how to make sure everyone is following, how to make sure that people are actually engaged. So maybe I put this question to Marva and Vignette, and also to you, William.
And that is why we thought about the methods that we used to ensure that they are engaged, with the case studies and the use of videos, because we took that into consideration as well. We also took into consideration how much time do you allot for each activity, because it's virtual space. And people may get bored, they may be sleepy, they may just not be listening to what is happening. So we took all of that into consideration. But, as I said earlier, and as Marva has said, the method you have to think about, and I think our presenter, the technologist, has said, you have to think about the various methods that you can use that will capture person's attention. And you have to also think about the time that you give them.
Yes, and as I've indicated earlier, I do not like the sterility of the space, because I love that interaction. You feed off the vibes that is coming from your participants, and it helps you to adjust your delivery. But there'll always be persons who are seclusionists, whether it be face-to-face or otherwise. They tend to go in the back, in the shadows. So what I did when I was presenting my paper, making my delivery, was to ensure that I pull out those persons. So if your camera is off, I'm gonna call on you to speak. So we ought as trainers, we ought to ensure that we have full participation, and especially now when we know persons could be out there doing anything. So you have to try to pull out persons and to have that participation. So although you may have a rapporteur or spokesperson for the group coming to speak, you call on other persons who are not affiliated to that group, so you can have that corporate response to the issues and so on. So as I say, you will always have that with a face-to-face. So you will have to formulate it, make an approach, take an approach that ensure full participation to the best of your abilities. So it is just about doing, and that is why we ensure too from the beginning to say to persons, we have a dress code. So you know that we're not going to entertain anyone who is not properly attired. It's a business, we're dealing with a business matter, you ought to look professional. So when your cameras are off, we expect, when we say to you, turn it on, you turn it on immediately and you're properly attired. Because we have too many incidences going around in the media where persons are taken or caught by surprise. So as I've said before, it's really, it's a lot of things we have to have in our contemplation, and to make it more we have to make it more interactive and more stimulating, because it can get dreary when you have no person-to-person interaction.
And I would like to say, just to add on to that, one of the things, you can do any type of learning activity you want in these environments. We play learning games, we play Jeopardy, we play poker, and all different kinds of games to get our audiences involved. But you're trying to test whether they're gaining knowledge. And so to do that, obviously you can give a polling question, or you can have a yes/no question, or you can have people sharing in the chat. One of the things I tell my faculty is, actually this environment can be sometimes even more rich in discussion, because sometimes those introverts in class won't say much, but in the chat tool, we see that those introverts are really participating, really sending in interesting questions, sometimes providing really rich discussion about a subject matter that we wouldn't get in an in-person classroom. So I think that we have to look at the advantages of online education and really use it to its advantage, and obviously design the course so that I would say to my faculty, I would say, you want to interact with your students about every 5 minutes. In a in-person classroom, you could probably go for 10 minutes with a lecture before doing some other type of activity. But in this environment, there are so many distractions at their fingertips that they can reach out. They can go to the email, they could go shopping, they could look at their text messages, and no one knows, right? So it's important to really interact with that audience in a very often throughout the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. I think all the panelists make a very good point. And I think that this all goes back to also the initial point made by Justice Marva about the preparations that the trainer needs to do himself or herself before the training. So it is a matter of learning about the platform, of planning the course so that you can really think of the different learning styles of the attendees, thinking of how to translate the learning styles into the virtual environment, and how to adjust to a platform. Regardless of the type of the platform, there's an adjustment to all of them. So I think these are all very good points, and maybe to give a brief information to participants that all of this information we have in our trainer's manual to assist the judicial trainers on how to organize all the steps that they have to think through before, during, and after the trainings. Again, I'm glad to see that Jamaica was able to translate that manual that was developed for in-person face-to-face trainings to the new in-person virtual trainings reality. And I think that the point, William, that you made about timing is also very, very important. I think that was also an interesting experience from our focal points in Jamaica, that they also translated the template agenda that we have in our trainer's manual, which is for a workshop of 1-2 days, into 2 hours of a very productive discussion. So that's also another exercise that trainers should do before planning their events. Any other tips on how to maybe translate maybe existing trainings into a virtual scenario?
Well, I think the main thing is to obviously set out your learning objectives. We all know that if we want to reach our goal, we have to know what the goal is, and so writing those learning objectives are so important. So we know where we're trying to take our audience. Once we have those learning objectives, then we can start to design some learning activities that are going to help the learners get to those learning objectives. And so, and I would suggest that, like I said before, I think you can utilize a lot of different types of learning activities in this environment, not just a lecture, which I'm doing right now, but the large group discussion with chat. You can have small group discussions in breakout rooms, and we've done that very effectively. We ran an entire civil mediation course online just recently, and we had very sophisticated role-playing exercises for all of the participants to participate in. So someone played the mediator, someone played the parties, another person played the attorney, and so they were in small groups and they had coaches, and so they really interacted with the materials. We knew whether they were learning or not because we could watch the mediators and we could see how effectively they were applying the tenets of good civil mediation practice, but in their small group mediations. And so it really does work. So you can assess not just through polling, but you can assess by watching people do things. We also have our learners teach small sections so that they have to maybe present something so that we can see that they are understanding the materials as well. So there are a lot of different ways that you can get that participant interaction. And like I said, it doesn't matter what the platform is. You're just going to push the envelope on whatever platform you're using so that you're using it to its fullest and highest extent.
I am happy that you raised the issue of learning styles, because I had a note here where that is one of your preparatory tool that you'd use, which we got from the network. We always have to know who our audience is, and we have to know the types of persons that comprise the group. And I don't know, but most times judges are stubborn people to change in terms of moving. Many of us, myself included, moving with the times. We're more comfortable with our own environment. There are some of us who are comfortable moving, but for the most part. So it is about creating a package, and that is part of your planning mechanism, to create a package with a little of everything for everyone. And our starting point is a fundamental principle, really, is that we're dealing with adult learners. Yes. And persons who themselves believe they're so knowledgeable in everything that they may believe that what else do you have to offer? So we focus on doing more than speaking. So we followed the guidelines, as I've said, very closely to say, let it be 80% doing and 20% speaking. Yeah. So we did not use much. If you look at our agenda, it was limited to 30 minutes of a lecturette where we deliver. I was just there speaking and getting feedback. And after that, it was pure discussion because persons working in groups. So it develops team spirit, it develops camaraderie, and it helps us even as a little icebreaker in itself, because you're able to maybe be in a group and speak about anything you care to speak about. And Vinette was mentioning to me earlier, and I leave her to speak about using icebreakers. Music like Go ahead.
Yes, we are happy for the information that we got about we can do just about anything with the platform. And we will be, in our next training, we'll be doing that. I was saying to Marvel that I'm sorry we did not show, well, we didn't have the time really, did not show that that activity where they had to identify how many, what was it again? How many? There's an activity, Roberto. No, yes, the basketball. How many times? And the monkey. Yes, right. That activity. You know, that icebreaker activity. But going forward, we are going to incorporate most of those activities and icebreakers in our virtual training until even when COVID is finished.
And we must say in our face-to-face, we had a session where we actually did music.
Yes.
So we had a break and we played a song which is very popular in the world because the young lady got a Grammy Award for it. And we played it and we said to the participants, we have been sitting all day, stand and dance. So we incorporated wellness, a focus on wellness, even while producing this package on ethics training. So it can be creative and it can be flexible. It is just for up to the imagination of the trainer. And as we all say, it can create a very nice, fertile environment for growth and development in terms of training programs. So I'm sure when we get out of the pandemic, we'll be much better off to a large extent in terms of knowledge of technology and the various platforms. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very interesting, and I think this answers one of the other questions that we have on the chat on how to translate, adapt to the online training to ensure that all participants' different learning styles are accommodated. And I think we've just heard very good examples from William and from Marva and Vignette that just because we're in a virtual environment, it doesn't mean that we can't be creative and also even get the participants to move around. So that's a very interesting experience. William, so we're getting to the end of our time of our webinar. So maybe I'll ask William and then Vignette and Marva if you have any final advice, recommendations, tips for our training sites before we conclude this event. Sorry, William, we can't hear you. Your microphone is muted.
Okay, so it's just like any in-person event, you have to plan for it. You have to assess the needs of your audience and then write those learning objectives and then create those learning activities and create something that's going to be interesting for that audience of learners, and to assess really what they need to do after that session, right? So we have a judicial writing course. Guess what? During that course, you're going to be doing a lot of writing as a student, and you're going to have people looking at your writing. You're going to have fellow students editing your writing. You're going to edit other people's writing. And so you learn by doing, and we try to use those same principles, whether we're online or in person, to have those individuals learn by doing. And the more you can do that, the better off the education will be. So good luck to all of you, and use your creativity, and don't be afraid to try out new things. We've, like I said, tried a lot of new things effectively. We've had some things that didn't work so well, and you kind of just make it clear to everybody at the beginning. We're going to be trying new things, and we may have some failures, but that's all part of the process, and we all learn together. So make sure you take those chances. So thank you so much for listening today.
Thank you so much. Marva and Vignette, any final advice, tips, comments?
Yes, I find that it is very important to have the evaluations done right after the training, and then probably 3 or 6 months after. And then we can use the evaluation forms and the comments made to see where the weaknesses are and improve on the next training. That is one advice tip that I would give. Secondly, it takes a lot of planning for us trainers who are going to deliver the course. And every session that you're planning, you try to be very creative, as was said before, with the various activities and the session. So the evaluation is critical in my view, and that would be an advice or tip I would like to leave.
Well, I would endorse and adopt everything that has been said by my fellow panelists. But as I say, the fundamental thing that we begin with is, what is our objective? And it is to create a deep understanding of the need for judges and a requirement to ensure that we have the highest integrity. And so ethical considerations should guide us in the execution of our functions. Once we start there, the question is, how do we deliver this so it is brought home very clearly to judges of the requirement? And to bring it home to them, we have to know what is the best tool we use. I would suggest that we really try to, because we're in a virtual space and the intimacy is not there, we have to seek to incorporate as much as possible the participation of the participants themselves so that they feel as if they're useful to the venture. So for instance, when we were planning, we made sure to organize in a way that we call upon them from before to do things. So there's someone who I know who is technologically savvy. Yeah. I'd say to him, I'm going to rely on you to put the to download or upload the PowerPoint presentation for me and so on. So you give them roles as well. So persons will come to the table knowing that they're important to the process, not just as learners, but as doers themselves. And as I said before, it's about technology. And as simple as it may seem, you have to make sure that you have the technology on the day when it's needed, because interconnectivity, as we have seen even here today, can be a serious problem. So we were worried here in Jamaica that today we might not have been able to even be there because we suffer from that setback. But what did we do? We call in our IT personnel. They're here with us in the room. They have to come with a backup, and we have to ensure that we're able to deliver. So the things may seem rudimentary. The basic things are the most important things. And we must not take anything at all for granted. And we must present to our participants the image that we too are learning. And we have to learn from them. And what we learn from them, we use to better our product. So we could be here all day because it's always fun to speak about ethics and judicial conduct, but we know we have time constraints. And with technology, we're always racing against time. So we must say thank you for recognizing our effort. We were very pleased to see that we did something that is viewed as being worthy enough to share with the world. And we're really honored for this platform, speaking on behalf of the judiciary of Jamaica. Our colleagues are very proud to see that we can share something with the world. And what better subject than integrity of the judiciary? Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vignette, Marva. Thank you so much, William. For us, it's a pleasure to have the both of you as focal points for Jamaica. We have also been learning a lot from you as focal points with your enthusiasm and your leadership in the implementation of the tools in your country. So thank you for that. I think this session today was very informative for everyone. I also took my own notes for the trainings that we ourselves organize. So thank you so much, William, for your participation, for sharing your extensive experience with us. I know that even before the pandemic, you were already doing virtual training. So you had a bit of a head start to us.
Yes.
But thanks for helping us to catch up. Thank you so much. I don't know if you would like to give any final words.
Well, absolutely. I just think that like I said before, it's so important to try out new things. And with our justices from Jamaica, I think what they said is so important, that we're all in this together. We're all learning together. And so to take some risks and plan for eventualities, and make sure that you have backup plans for everything that you're doing. But it's a great time to try out new methods. And we've learned a lot from this process, even though we were doing virtual education before the pandemic. We've taken additional risks with some of our content because we knew we needed more small group discussions and so forth. We had never used that functionality in Webex meeting before, and that's something we've done now. In Zoom, we've done a lot of breakout sessions. So we've now tested things that we didn't utilize before. So take those risks and just get better each time you present. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our three panelists for sharing so many interesting experiences, nice guidance to our training sites, and to all of the participants of the network, because judiciaries not only have to organize judicial ethics training, but various types of trainings, and I think all of these tips apply to any kind of training, especially at this time of the pandemic. I will just maybe give some quick information about how to become a training site for the judicial ethics training tools of the Global Judicial Integrity Network. We welcome all jurisdictions to join us to implement the training tools. The three tools, the e-learning course, the self-directed course, and the trainer's manual, they are all available on our website, free of charges, and they're publicly available on the website. For the e-learning tool, you require a very simple registration process, but after that is complete, you automatically can have access to the e-learning course. It's 3 modules covering all of the Bangalore principles of judicial conduct. They take about 80 minutes each to complete, but you can stop and resume at your own pace at any moment. At the end of the e-learning course, there is a final test, and if the participant passes the test with 80% over 80% score, they receive a certificate at the end of the training. Considering also the challenges sometimes to connectivity, internet access, some of the challenges in the digital gap, we have developed a self-directed course, which is the offline version of the e-learning course. So if any judge or jurisdiction has any difficulties with the internet, or through their learning style, an e-learning course is not the best option for them, but they prefer either a hard copy publication, we can ship those to the training site, or the participant can download a PDF version of the self-directed course on our website. It's an interactive PDF, but the person doesn't need the internet to use the interactive functions of the PDF. So they can just download that file, use it also at their own pace whenever they have time for the training. And these 2 tools are complemented by the trainer's manual that we have mentioned here, with especially through the experience of the Judiciary of Jamaica, but also of Paraguay and Cyprus. The trainer's manual, we have a lot of information on learning styles, teaching techniques, how to organize the training, how to plan the training, how to evaluate the training after it's conducted. So all the steps before, during, and after the training. It also has a template agenda for the training, has various case studies, exercises, icebreakers that trainers can use. All of these materials, again, are free of charge and available publicly on our website and in various languages. Of course, we hope that in the future we'll have even more languages available, but at the time we have English, Spanish, French, Arabic, Russian, and Portuguese. Please feel free to, the link to our page on the training tools is on the chat, but also feel free to visit our website for more information. To become a training site, please get in touch with the Secretariat of the network. We would be happy to work with your jurisdiction to assist you in becoming a training site and implementing the training tools. There are some very simple steps into becoming a training site, and we encourage all jurisdictions to get in touch with us to learn about this and join this group. That is really a group for peer support, for peer learning. It's an open forum for discussion and the sharing of good experiences. I think everyone mentioned here that at some point or another that the training is also an opportunity for the trainers to learn. We take this to our hearts in the work that we develop with judicial ethics training, because we know that every jurisdiction has something to teach and to learn from each other. So that's also one of the purposes of conducting webinars like this and providing spaces like the new web page on our website with information about the implementation of the tools by the training sites. So I invite everyone to access our website, take a look at the tools, and contact us for more information, and encourage all jurisdictions to become training sites. Please stay tuned also on our website for our next webinars. We'll soon be adding information to the website on the next sessions that we'll be conducting with the dates and the information on how to join. And you will also receive that by email if you are on the mailing list as a participant of the network. If you're not, also get in touch with us to join that mailing list. We would be happy to include you. So again, thank you so much to our panelists, William Brunson of the National Judicial College of the United States, Justices Marva and Vignette of the Judiciary of Jamaica. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today. And to everyone who joined us today, thank you for being with us through your day, evening, or morning. And stay tuned for more activities of the Global Judicial Integrity Network. Thank you so much again, and see you soon in our next activities. Goodbye.